All right. Good afternoon, everyone. It's 12 and like 12 seconds, so that counts as afternoon in my book. If you are watching from somewhere else, it's probably way afternoon. So welcome to everyone. This is our next installment of the Design Your Days webinar series for this fall. And we are just gonna kind of get right into it today like we normally do. And the first thing I always want to do is thank our amazing sponsor, the League of Women in Government. They are the group that um, that sponsors this webinar. It's the partnership that I have with them, and they're really just an amazing umbrella organization. The one thing I will also say about them is you need their newsletter in your life. You need the humor, you need the information, you need the contacts. So the address is right there, leagueofwomeninggovernment.org/news. You can also Google search for them and find them that way. So definitely an awesome resource for you, something that you should be checking out and making sure you're incorporating. Another awesome resource I want to tell you about, this is a sponsor of the fall webinar series, SGR, Strategic Government Resources. They provide executive recruitment services among many of the other awesome things that they do. And the thing that I really like about SGR, as opposed to some of the other firms that are out there that offer these types of services for you, is they have a very high degree of personal attention that they bring to make sure that they're really finding the best match for your organization. So check them out. Website's down there at the bottom. We'll recap that at the end, but thank you to SGR for sponsoring and making this webinar series possible. Okay, I'm Nicole Lance, CEO of Lance Strategies. If you haven't met me yet or haven't been on a webinar, I like to give you a little bit of an overview. My background is in local government here in Arizona, most recently serving as Assistant City Manager for the City of Surprise. I'm the co-founder of Arizona Women Leading Government. And in addition to my own firm, I also have a joint venture called Extraordinary Balance. And we focus on strategic planning, diversity and inclusion work, and team communication dynamics. So that's me over there in the green Converse. I'd like to give you a little peek into the personal life so you know who's sitting here on the other end talking to you. This is my stepdaughter, Micah, in her Navy uniform, and that's my little one, Emerson, because wouldn't it just be fun to start all over after 18 and a half years over there on the left-hand side of your screen. And then that's my husband and my little one on a recent trip to one of the aquariums here in Phoenix. So today's title, Don't Overreact but Don't Underreact, Building Resiliency for Better Outcomes. That is what we're here to talk about. We're going to go through some content like usual, then do some Q&A at the end because I really like these to be interactive. But first, if you are listening and this is how you are feeling right now, if you have this on like the third or fourth or fifth or sixth screen that's minimized and you're trying to multitask between 7 or 8 different things, or you're going, holy cow, how could I be sitting on this webinar when clearly I have a billion other things to do? Please take a deep breath. And then please take another one. You are here. This is time allotted for this. This is a solid investment of your time. If you are feeling this way, this is exactly the right spot for you to be because we're going to talk a little bit about that during the webinar. Okay, so today's format, same as the other series, 30 minutes total, content and Q&A. You have the little bar over there where you can submit questions throughout the webinar, so please do so. I'll tackle them at the end. First thing I want to give you is this idea of don't overreact but don't underreact and where it came from. These are air conditioning filters. For my fellow Arizona people or anyone that lives in a hot climate, you are very familiar with what the clean one looks like, which is the nice white clean one on the left, and what a dirty filter looks like. The reason I like this kind of analogy is don't overreact, don't underreact. Is an excellent filter for how you respond to adversity in situations or challenges, or hey, holy cow, what do I do with this thing that just popped up? It actually was introduced to me by a man named Kevin Evans, who is a former city manager that I had the privilege of working for really early in my career. And Kevin was famous for this phrase. I would come into his office, hey, do you have a minute? I would knock on his door and I'd walk inside. And before I got a word out of my mouth, Kevin would look at me and he would say, I have 2 questions for you. 1, are you overreacting? And sometimes I would go, Yes, I'll be back later. And I would leave the office. And he goes, 2, are you underreacting? And it was a great filter for me to say, hey, am I giving the right level of attention and response and information to everyone involved in whatever the situation is? So I encourage you to use that as a great filter for you, not just in your professional world, but also in your personal life as well. So let's start off by talking about underreact and how do we avoid underreaction, because some of us minimize maybe what needs to happen. We're ever the optimist, we can handle it, it'll work out, and then we get a little bit further down the road and it kind of comes back and bites us. So the first one, I always say identify the concerns. Like really look at what are the concerns, the actionable pieces of whatever is being presented to you. That might need to be considered. What are those things that are happening? What are the kind of companion concerns of if this goes sideways, what are the other potential effects? So really identifying that. Who else needs to know? Not who else, might want to know, but really who else could be impacted by this? Who else might be able to help solve the problem or attack the issue or need to be part of that kind of solution finding conversation? So who else needs to know? And then what do they need to know? This is level of information. Some people believe in the, well, I'll just overinform and let them sort that out. I put that as akin to the people who put a CC on every email as a CYA for themselves. So say, well, I copied you on the email. That's not a good response. That's not a great approach. So really think through what do they need to know and at what level, and then by when. Is there a deadline? Is there a next evolution of the problem that's been presented? So really thinking through that time frame and also what they need to know. I live by the principle bad news doesn't get better with time. We've tackled this in other webinars about our kind of innate tendency to avoid tough conversations. That's courageous conversations. How do we have those? And they're not comfortable. And so as human beings, we by nature avoid them because they're uncomfortable and we don't like to have them. So that adhering to that principle, bad news doesn't get better with time. So not letting things linger. And then finally, what am I actually responsible for? What part of this do I own and should I own and take forward? And what are the parts that, maybe that is something that is outside of my jurisdiction, my control, my pay grade, my sphere of responsibility, my industry, my department, whatever it is. And once you've indicated what you're responsible for, that's going to give you that kind of bright line into who else needs to know what. And then you can work back through by when, that sort of stuff. I also want to talk about overreacting. Early in my career, especially, now my husband probably say I still do this, but I was a chronic overreactor. And Kevin Evans swears he didn't create that phrase for me, but sometimes I wonder, because more often than not, I would walk into his office and he would say, hey, are you overreacting? And I would say, you know what? I need to step back out. I'll come back once I've thought this through a little bit more, because I had this desire to solve things really quickly, which can be really good, but can be burdensome for those around you when you really need to take a little bit more time to think it through. So here's my tips on avoiding overreaction. The first one, take a breath. Take a breath, take a beat, like give it a little bit of time. Doesn't get better with age, but it doesn't mean that you can't take 2 minutes to really seriously sit down and think, take a couple breaths and make sure that you're in your optimal place for assessing what needs to happen. And then take that assessment, really look at it. Is this critical to bring up the ladder, sideways across the ladder? Is there someone else that needs to be involved? Is this something I can control, need to control, I should own? And just really give that time for that assessment. You wouldn't have a car problem, leave it by the side of the road and go straight to the dealership and buy the first thing that you walked into the lot and saw, right? There would be a lot more assessment. You don't need months of research here, but give yourself enough time, again, to make sure you're in that optimal space for making that decision about what you're going to be doing. Employ empathy. This one is huge. In these situations, we default into either I need to solve it, holy crap, I want it off my desk so I don't get in trouble for it, or the boss needs to know. and maybe they do, but really put yourself in that place of empathy, which means stepping into someone else's sphere of operating, how they're feeling. If I were my boss, my supervisor, my customer, etc., what would I want to know or need to know about this situation? And then craft your response from there. So it's very simple. These are basic things, but when we get into that panic mode of, oh, the thing's been presented and it's either uncomfortable or it's going to be problematic, our default is to move into that fight or flight response. So flight being underreaction, I'm going to avoid it. Fight tending to put us into that overreactive stage. So stepping into empathy can help you there. And then really thinking through what specifically would I need or want to know about this? And that's going to help you with that scope and of the information that's being provided. Your customer may not need to know the other 28 steps that happened before that interaction, but they might need to know the last 2 or 3 that made a difference in what's happening for them or to them now. Same thing for your supervisor. They may need a lot more of those steps than the customer did, but they still might not need the entire history. And so try to deploy that information judiciously at a level that's important for them. And then that last question, what is the lowest level at which this can be resolved, and what will it take to make that happen? I'm a big fan of resolving this where you can in the chain, making sure you're sharing the information appropriately, but it can be really draining as a supervisor, manager, director, boss, to have employees constantly running to you without bringing a solution, or at least trying something that's at a more appropriate level. And then really getting into what does it take to make that happen at that level. Okay, I want to get real for a minute, because when I put this topic out there, as I've had a couple of conversations with people specifically about this webinar, but certainly when I've taught this topic or done workshops, keynotes around this topic elsewhere, what people actually want to talk about is this idea of moving from, you know, kind of this good Britney Spears space pre-2007 to this Britney Spears. And so this, you know, idea of how can I go from feeling so normal to, holy cow, I'm freaking out, this is really difficult. So I want to let you know, number one, if Britney Spears can survive 2007, so can you. So let's talk about that a little bit, because it's usually an underlying piece around this topic. How do I stop freaking out? And for these people that are challenged by this, or if you have coworkers that deal with this, pay attention, because you can offer some support and some different tactics to them as well, or you can learn to change your behavior as well. Because it doesn't mean, just because we freak out, it doesn't mean we have a terrible reaction or we overreact outwardly, but that inner struggle can be really challenging and really draining. So 478, breathing. This is a tactic developed by Dr. Andrew Weil, Center for Integrated Medicine down at the University of Arizona. 478 breathing is really simple. It's a breathing tactic I use personally, because when someone tells me to take a couple of deep breaths, I'm pretty good for the first one. And then by the second one, I'm like, oh my gosh, I forgot to get groceries for dinner. I didn't send that card to my grandma like I should have. I don't think we need to do the thing that we said we were going to do. I forgot to buy the card for the birthday party this weekend. And then all of a sudden I'm spinning in my to-do list. And then I'm like, oh yeah, I'm supposed to be relaxing. And then I start over and it's a new litany. So 478 breathing is a super easy tactic. Essentially, the way that it works, you put your tip of your tongue behind your teeth, your top teeth. So like this, like that, but with your mouth closed. And you breathe in through your nose for 4 counts, you hold the breath at the top for 7, and then you exhale through your mouth with your tip of your tongue still behind your teeth. So it looks kind of funny, but you do that for a count of 8. So it's easier if you kind of purse your lips and make a little whooshing sound. A little bit obvious if you're in a meeting, so maybe do that in your office with the door closed, or go out to your car. Simply just that rate of the breathing too, even if you can't do the tongue and the exhale, 4, in for 4, hold for 7, exhale for 8, will help lower your heart rate and supercharge your body with oxygen. So 4, 7, 8 breathing, it's enough structure to get you going, but enough to also bring you down out of kind of that overwhelm, overreacting state. Power phrases. These are awesome. Deploy them in your own head, put them on sticky notes in your vehicle, around your office, on your computer, whatever it is. But what are those things that get you back on track? And kind of put you in that right mindset. These might be affirmations. I can do this. I am capable. I got this, whatever it is. I personally like frantic is not my framework. When I drop into overreacting, frantic is not my framework is usually a real quick one to kick me back out of, okay, I need to step back and take an assessment. Am I overreacting? Am I underreacting? That one is also my other go-to power phrase. Am I overreacting? Am I underreacting? So find a phrase that works for you as that kind of signal to put you back into that optimal position. And be your own other, and I have that in quotes, because we generally, we being all of you who are listening, strong leaders, tend to be really good at being champions for other people and a lot less good at being champions for ourselves. So can you step out when you get into that situation where you're like, holy cow, what do I do about this? I don't want to underreact. I don't want to overreact. Step back and think of what you would be saying to someone else if you were advising them in this situation. Either what they should be thinking about, providing encouragement. Hey, did you think about this? Who else might need to know? Asking some of those questions. So learn to be your own other in those situations. This last one is really key. Be truthful about what has actually happened in the past. For people who struggle with chronic worry or fear, fear is my new favorite F word that I'm playing with right now and digging into and really doing a deep dive on, especially in my coaching work. Be truthful about what has actually happened in the past, because these situations come up and we instantly get into, or we can, or those around us can, get into this holy cow mode. What am I going to do? And there's this feeling of it's the first time we've tackled this. Well, we actually probably have tackled iterations of this challenge or problem in various ways prior to this. And it might be pieces of it, may not be it in its entirety. And there's going to be differences or different players. But generally, we have enough experience to say, I at least have a toehold in how to handle this. And the last time this happened, it was okay. It got resolved. It worked out. We ended up coming to agreement on how to handle it, whatever it is. So don't forget to tell yourself that truthful story about what's happened and about your own success previously. That can be really powerful for giving you a good foothold. Okay, so we are to the Q&A portion. And I've got a couple of them coming in. So I want to jump over to those right now. If you still come up with one, go ahead and type it in and we'll chat them through, but I'll just go ahead and start with the first one. Nicole, my boss overreacts about everything. Everything's in like all caps. Everything's an emergency and drop what you're doing to deal with this latest thing. It's exhausting. How can I deal with this? Okay, so cool questions about actually someone in your environment instead of how you underreact or overreact. So in this case, when you have that boss where everything's an emergency and everything is a drop what you're doing, these are a little bit more challenging because you're not in direct control of the response mechanism. So I think one is understand that this is their MO. This is how they operate. This is their default first response. And quit pushing back against that, because the more you resist it or try to deflect it, the less supported they're going to feel. Now, you don't need to overreact the other way and say, you're right, the building's burning, let's abandon ship, to mix my metaphors a little bit for you. But really step into that place of empathy. Where is this coming from for them? Are they concerned? Are they overwhelmed? And so one more thing feels like the big thing, or, you know, is something else driving? Is this just kind of generally how they operate? Once you know that, what is that next step that usually happens? Do they usually call the team meeting, come up with a solution, then deploy the solution? Do they just need to get it out of their system and have someone receive the info and then they kind of calm down and deal with it? I had one department that I used to work with that I said was a 24-hour turnaround for any item, because I needed to go in, drop the idea or the situation or the challenge and let them freak out and then wait 24 hours, and then I would come back and they would have this awesome solution. So think through to what that next step usually is and craft your response around that. But stepping into that place of empathy, but not owning or reacting in the same way. That's the balance that you want to strike. So understand that that's what it is, but don't behave that way yourself. And then when they're in a calmer state, say, hey, I want to cross-check based on the new thing that happened, all of the other things that were in play already. Where are we at on these, so that I can make sure I support you the best way possible. That's usually enough of a process to help get them through that and move them on to the next thing that needs to happen. Okay. I have a tendency to overreact. I'm so afraid of doing something wrong that I tend to wait to take any action until I've talked to my boss. How can I be more proactive? So cool, good question. I like the self-awareness that you know you're afraid of doing something wrong, but that also you have this delay issue that's going on that really does need to be worked on, because you don't want to wait to take any action until you've talked to your supervisor. So how can I be more proactive? I think the deeper question is what's going on with your process there, because maybe you don't need to be more proactive if you have a boss that wants you to behave this way. I'm doubting that's the case because you're asking this question. So I would offer a couple of things. Number one, go talk to your boss about this tendency. And in that conversation, preferably ahead of that conversation, figure out why you're behaving this way, why you're, what's causing that delay for you, and say, is it insecurity? Do I not have enough information? Do I feel like I don't have the authority or the delegation? Think that through, and then bring that openly to your supervisor and say, hey, I've noticed this about my behavior. Can you help me work on it? That's a really good way to really kind of, sorry, I'm trying to pull up this other question that just got asked. It's a really good way to open the conversation and get some good feedback, but also give yourself some room to think through what's happening for you. Okay, I'm having trouble opening this one, so I'm going to move to the next one. Okay, I recently got in trouble because of something I thought wasn't as big of a deal as my supervisor did. I didn't report the issue to her when it happened because I knew we had a way of handling it. She found out about it after the fact, and she was really upset I didn't tell her about it, even though it was already taken care of. I think she totally overreacted. How do I deal with this? So in this case, I think that it's very possible that you underreacted. Not impossible that she's overreacting, but the way that this is worded, I knew we had a way of handling it. I didn't report it to her until after because I was comfortable with it. She was really upset I didn't tell her about it, even though it was already taken care of. So a couple of dynamics going on there. Number one, what was she really upset about? Because it's going to be deeper than the fact that she just didn't know. There's going to be something else going on there. She was possibly in a position of getting asked about it and not knowing about it, even though it was happening and you had knowledge that should have been shared. That is a case where maybe it's not, hey, I need to run to you with my hair on fire, but I'm going to give you a heads up, this is going on, and we're already solving it, FYI, versus no communication. That's generally what drives a response like that, because she's not mad at how you handled it. She's mad that that you didn't tell her about it. So I think number one, in any event, be humble about that. Apologize. Tell her that, hey, I am sorry. Even if you think she overreacted, but use that as a platform to get to what the actual challenge is for her, what's driving that insecurity, because she may not be overreacting in general. She might be overreacting to that specific one, but she really might be just reacting to a different set of pressures that's coming in that you may have no awareness of. And that honestly is where the empathy needs to come into this. That's where empathy becomes really, really critical. Okay, so I've got another one right here. Okay, here, oh, this is just actually Susie, thank you for sharing this. On the power phrases, if you say your name in addition to I or you, it's a more powerful version of self-talk. For example, Nicole, you are powerful. It shifts how we perceive it. So cool science fun fact. Thank you, Susie, for bringing that up. That is the power of verbalizing and personalizing our statements or affirmations versus just having that phrase. So putting a little more power in your power phrase. I kind of dig that one. Okay, so I do have time for one more question, if there is one. Looks like everybody's okay. So if you think of something after the webinar, please send it over to me. Shoot me an email, connect me on one of the various links on social media, and we'll go that way. But don't hesitate to reach out. Also, not just on this content, but for future content. If there's a topic you want to see, something you want to cover, I'd love to hear from you. One last just reminder on our sponsor, SGR, and their executive recruitment searches, super personalized. They have a bunch of different options for how to do this for your organization. Encourage you to check them out. So, oops, skipped a little ahead. Next month, we have mindfulness amidst the madness, and then, which is really well timed right before the holiday season gets into crazy mode. If you have family commitments coming up, might be a good one to kind of arm yourself with to get through that next realm. I intentionally scheduled that in November so that we could tackle that topic and kind of get you equipped for the rush of that next couple months towards the end of the year. And then in December, we'll be talking about extending your influence. And I love this topic, and this is one of my favorite things to work with and was really powerful for me in various work environments with this concept of how we build, leverage, and expand our influence outward. If you are connected with me on social media, I am traveling extensively the next couple weeks, so keep an eye out for all the cool things. But the big one I'm super excited about is also in partnership with the League of Women in Government, and that's kicking off the Women's Symposium at the International City and County Management Association Conference in Nashville this weekend. So stay tuned and keep your eyes peeled for some of the fun posts coming out about that. And my firm Extraordinary Balance is also super proud to announce that we are sponsoring the Civic Pride reception at the ICMA conference. So keep an eye out for that on social media as well. And just a really great organization doing important work around diversity and inclusion in the public sector space. So with that, thank you for being here. Go do your 4-7-8 breathing. I hope you feel a little bit more empowered as you go back throughout your day. Remember that filter, don't overreact, but don't underreact. And remember that stepping into empathy is a really powerful tool for helping you navigate that conversation. And as always, thank you for what you do, for being who you are, and for serving your organizations, your communities, your families, your sphere of influence, your circle of friends in the way that you do. Don't ever underestimate the power of what you do and how important it is to other people. If you do find that you're underestimating that or you've forgotten that, please give me a call and I would be more than happy to remind you of that. Thank you so much. Have an awesome rest of the day.